So I recently picked myself up this lovely MSX2 from Panasonic, but there's one problem with it. It's absolutely filthy and it seriously needs a clean. So first thing to do is take it apart, and as you can see here, it's in pieces on the bed. The missus was certainly not too happy about that. Taking a closer look up at the keyboard, you can see that it is caked in dust, and behind the keys was really big pieces of thick dust. Also, the back of the console where the ports were was also covered in thick, greasy, grimy dust, and it didn't look good at all. And believe it or not, the membrane inside the keyboard was covered in what can only be described as sand. Although it wasn't sand, it was just years and years of thick muck. So the first thing to do is get all those keys off. Now this is a mechanical keyboard, so there are lots of springs, so you got to be careful not to lose all the springs. So once all the keys were off, the base got a lovely clean. Now we got to go and clean every single one of those keys, because they're filthy too. So as usual, I used my trusty old friend, the wet tissue, which is basically made for cleaning floors. This stuff has a mild detergent in it and works absolutely fantastic for cleaning all manner of stuff, including keyboard keys, as you can see here. Now normally I would clean these things in the kitchen sink, but since they all have little springs in the back of the keys themselves, I didn't want to risk losing any of them, so this was the easiest way, although it did take a long time. But as you can see, they come out quite shiny. And then after taking all the keys off and cleaning them, you've got to put them back on. So I would recommend starting with the bigger keys, which need this little metal bar behind them to make them fit securely. Once you've got these main big keys on, the rest are much easier to put together. So next comes the tedious task of putting on all the springs. These also had to be cleaned by hand. Once you have all those springs on, it looks pretty good actually, it's time to get the buttons on, and these are very easy to put on. You just basically put them in the correct position and clip them in. And there we have it, one complete keyboard. Completely dust free and looking very nice indeed, as good as new, dare I say. So the next thing to do is flip it over and put the membrane back on the back. This is also being cleaned using those floor wipe tissues and dried off with a normal Kleenex style tissue. And onto the membrane goes the metal back plate, which just clips into place. Okay, so the next thing to do is take a look at the main motherboard. As you can see, the bottom of the motherboard is fairly clean, so that doesn't need any work at all. The top of the motherboard, well, yeah, it's kind of clean. There's a bit of corrosion around the cartridge port, but in general spec, it's pretty clean. As you can see, the two wires are being cut off there. They actually connect to the battery port on the console. Now, as mentioned before, the back ports were very dirty, so they certainly need cleaning. So what's the best way to clean rusty old ports? Yes, you guessed it, the old floor cleaner is back, and as you can see, it really does take off the grime. Now it's not going to get these looking absolutely brand new and super shiny like they're being re-chromed or something, but it certainly does the job. Just look at how much grime and muck comes off these components. And now I've got to solder the wires back onto the battery port, which were actually stuck into the machine as well, so you have to be very careful when soldering these wires back onto the ports, because you don't want to be melting the plastic. And yes, I am aware that my soldering skills suck ass big time. But yep, that seems to do the job, and I did put a bit of hot glue on to help them stay in. And once that's done, you put the motherboard back into the base of the machine shell and connect the keyboard to the main ports on the motherboard. After that, we put the pre-cleaned case back together. Making sure you press it in nice and firmly on the corners to make sure all the pieces click into place. And as you can see, we now have one very clean looking Panasonic A1 MSX2. But does it still work after I took it apart? You bet your ass it does. And like any good machine of this age, it's got to be running through RGB. None of that composite crap. RGB all the way. And as you can see, even running on a modern TV, this looks fantastic. Just look at how clean that is. Yes, it is going through a frame meister, but what you expect on a modern TV? You need something to get it working.